Amadakiapi, Nick Tilsen, Amachapi, Chantea Washtenape Chuzapelo. My name is Nick Tilsen. I'm Oglala Lakota, President and CEO of NDN Collective, father of 4, and I live in Pahisinte on the Pine Ridge Indian Res. And it's an honor to be here today amongst this showcase of all these amazing change makers from throughout the Indigenous world that are making an imprint on the world. And I just wanted to start off by sharing some woke sampe and some encouragement to the change makers. And as we do this work and as we try to create a ripple effect of change throughout the world, it's often that the systems that we're upsetting and the change that we are creating in the world is disrupting the status quo. And in the disrupting of the status quo, often what happens is people take shots at you when you're in leadership. And because you are reimagining and recreating a whole new world, and it's often challenging people's way of thinking. It's pushing the envelope. And so my woke sapi that I have to share today is some words of encouragement for all of you change makers that are part of this cohort of NDN Changemaker Fellows. And encouragement of something that I heard in ceremony one time that I would want to repeat and share here. And one of the things was there was a time in which I was struggling as a change maker, as a community organizer, with something that I was trying to do. And I kind of wanted to give up. I was at the stage where I was willing to do whatever the ancestors wanted me to do. And I went to them for direction. And when I went to them for direction, they told me something. And they said that you're creating change in the world and you're impacting lives of people who you will never meet. You are impacting people's lives who will never know that you impacted their lives. And that's an indicator that you're doing good work. And so when you are walking in which you feel like you're alone, when you are on a journey in being a change maker out there in the world and you feel like you're alone, you're actually not, because we're there with you. And they told that to me in ceremony, in a Yuipi ceremony, one of our traditional Lakota ways. And that always helped me understand that we are just part of a broader change that's happening. And that being a change maker really just means that we're playing our role in this world that we're trying to build and to reimagine. And to remember that our ancestors that have come before, they want us to be doing this work. They want us to be our authentic selves. They want us to be sacrificing. They want us to be committing to the next generation. They want us to be building a pathway for generations to come. And so when I go through hard times, I reflect on that. Even though that teaching was for at that time in my life when I was struggling, now when I struggle as a change maker out there in the world, I remember those moments. And so I share those. And to those of you that are listening and that are watching all these change makers, when we're sitting at home, when we're in the struggles of our community and we see people step forth, it is also a courageous thing to step forth and encourage them and to walk with them, not behind them, not in front of them, but side by side for all these things that we're trying to do for our people. And so when you're, as you're sitting at home and you're thinking about all of these change makers and their stories and their visions and for everything that they're trying to create out there in the world, try to envision yourself in the future that they're trying to build. Try to envision yourself of what you can do to commit yourself to a cause bigger than yourself, because that's what every one of these change makers are doing here today. Wopila tanka e chichapalo, doksha ake wachiankikte.
Hamidakyapi, Chantewashte Nape Chuzapia, Gaby Strong Imakyapi. Greetings, relatives. My name is Gaby Strong. Sistin Wapton, Badewaka to Dakota, zooming in today from Minnesota, Makoche, also known as Minnesota. And it's an honor for me to be here today, joining all of you in this virtual space, to welcome you to this virtual space, and just to be able to provide a message of deep appreciation and gratitude for all that you've been able to do. Not only through the Changemaker Fellowship experience that we've been honored to support, but throughout your life, throughout your journey, through the love you have for your people, for the dedication that you have and show to your community and to your people. I extend our deep appreciation for that. And we are so pleased that you are willing to share some of those experiences with us through this virtual showcase today. It is through people like yourself who remain steadfast in their commitments, who remain in our communities, sometimes behind the scenes, sometimes not often receiving credit, sometimes not having high profiles, but who remain steadfast in our community, who are the real change makers, who are helping to shift things in a way that's necessary for our people to thrive, for our communities to be safe and healthy and well and vibrant. All of those things are made possible through people like you. And we are so honored, deeply appreciative of being able to support a small part of your journey in doing that through the Changemaker Fellowship. And recognizing the strategies and the principles that go into defending our communities, our lands, our people, to developing our communities in a way that is regenerative and sustainable, and to decolonizing in a way that revitalizes and reclaims and renews all of our beautiful languages and lifeways and ways of governing and being in this world. Part of our birthright as Indigenous peoples throughout Turtle Island, beyond the post-colonial borders of the United States or Canada and Mexico and all of our surrounding island nations as well. So we look forward to what you will share with us today and in the ensuing days through this showcase. We appreciate all that you have done, all that you will continue to do, and all that you will share. These are lessons learned. These are insights that are crucial for all of us to understand in working on behalf of our people, on behalf of our lands, on behalf of all that we love as Indigenous people. So to that I say, Wopiratanka Chichapia, Midakuya Awasi, we are all related.
Thank you to both Nick and Gaby. Bija Udabino, good day everyone. My name is Sarah Sunshine Manning and I am the Director of Communications here at NDN Collective, and I'll be hosting a large part of our showcase over the next several panels. A little bit about myself before we get started. I am a citizen of the Shoshone-Paiute tribes of the Duck Valley Indian Reservation in Idaho and Nevada. I am Noah and Nama, and I'm also a descendant of the Chippewa Cree tribes of Rocky Boy, Montana. And I'm a mother, and I've been a part of NDN Collective since we launched in 2018, and it's really been exciting to see the work evolve and change, and in particular the work of the NDN Changemaker Fellowship become what it is today. So What we're going to be getting into in the next 5 panels with the Changemakers is 5 different discussions with 15 of our NDN Changemaker Fellows. And across those 5 panels, we're going to be dividing them into 3 different themes: defend, develop, and decolonize, where each of the fellows will be sharing a little bit about their work in their home communities and how they fit into each of these categories, knowing that many of these fellows, their work cuts across all 3. So we're really excited to welcome you all here today. So if you haven't already, please let us know in the chat below where you're joining us from and whose territory you're calling in from. Also during the programming, we're going to be joined by 3 different Indigenous artists who will be performing in between all of our programs. We'll be joined by Lyla June Johnson, Mato, and Mike Jordan, and each of them will be performing in every single one, or there will be presence from each of them in every single one of these events. So please stick around from the beginning to the end. We have a lot planned for you, and it's and a lot of really inspiring and engaging conversations with people all across Turtle Island, across the border of so-called Canada, and down south to so-called Mexico, and to surrounding island nations where the NDN Changemaker Fellowship is offered. So we're really, really excited to get into these conversations and to connect and to hopefully inspire you all and to see how NDN Collective is investing in place-based solutions and investing in change makers doing really beautiful work in their home communities. But before we get into all of those conversations, what I wanted to do next is get into a conversation with a couple of our co-hosts. So our first conversation is actually going to be with our other 2 co-hosts, Penelise Droz and Nicole Yanis, who are also part of the NDN Collective team. And we'll be talking a little bit more here in this first conversation about the Changemaker Fellowship, its intent, its purpose, how things have evolved with the fellowship over the past few years. So to kick us off, we'll do a quick round of introductions, starting with Dr. Penelise Droz, who's been with NDN since almost the beginning as well, and who has been deeply involved in the development of the NDN Changemaker program since the very beginning. So welcome, Penelise, if you could just start out by introducing yourself.
Yeah, miigwech, Sarah. I am so excited to be here and part of the showcasing our incredible cohort of movers and shakers. As she said, my name is Penelise Droz. I'm an Anishinaabe descendant. I was also raised in the Shirai Yurok community of Northern California, where I have relatives still. I am a program officer in the foundation and have gotten to hold and witness and grow and learn in the production and create the creation and birth of the Changemaker Fellowship program. It has been one of my deepest honors and biggest inspirations to be able to get to know these, our change makers over the years, follow their work, and be part of their support network. And yeah, I'll turn it over to my other co-host and fellow program officer, Nicole Yanis.
Thank you, Penelise. Good day, relatives. My name is Nicole Yanis. I am Opata. I was raised in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, in Nogales, Arizona, right along the border. I am calling in from Tucson, Arizona, the Northern Territory, and it's an honor to be here today as you get to hear from these change makers and their journey throughout their fellowship and the incredible work that they're doing for their people and their communities. I joined Penelise to support the Changemaker Fellowship at spring of 2019 in what is now known as Mexico, south of the southern medicine line or border, and then came in as program officer in my current role in spring of 2020. So it's an honor to be here, very excited for what you're all gonna experience and hear from these amazing change makers, and it's an honor to be here with both of you.
Thanks, Penelise and Nicole, and it's been so fun to work with you both over the years and getting to know the change makers, seeing the work that they're doing, and just having the privilege of being in the space, whether in person or virtually, with a lot of these change makers over the past few years. So the next thing I'd like to hear more about, or that we can share more with our audience about, is the vision and intent of this very unique fellowship. And from what I understand, there really isn't anything quite like this. There's all sorts of fellowships across Indian country, but this one is really, really unique. And so, if the two of you can now share with us some background about the Changemaker Fellowship and how it evolved, what is the vision and intent of the Changemaker Fellowship? And we'll start with you, Penalise, as I know you've also been here since the beginning in the development of this really beautiful program.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the dialogues that were foundational to how this program has come to be. And yes, it is. There's nothing like it. We're one of a kind in this offering. And our foundational conversations were, what could become possible if Indigenous leaders of all ages, of all experiences and backgrounds were supported with time,
Mhm.
supported with time to dream, to vision, to invest in their personal strength, invest in their sustainability, invest in their leadership. A lot of the times, you all know the folks in our communities that are those ones sort of stepping forward with those brave visions, those brave ideas, um, doing that decolonial work, reimagining the how to bring our nations into an Indigenous future. It takes a lot of struggle. It does not come with a lot of money and financial resources often. It takes a lot of energetic sacrifice. And I think that we all know those people who give so much um, unhesitantly in service of their communities, of their nations, of their people, and out of that love. Um, and so we created the Changemaker Fellowship offer um, to offer a rest, to offer a reprieve. It is a $75,000 cash award. It goes to 21 Indigenous leaders across Turtle Island, including the islands, the affiliated islands. Um, and not only a cash award so that people can have some of their living burden relieved, but also some of those monies are specifically designed to be invested in certain areas um, um, that we identified areas that uh, leaders can invest into to build their sustainability, to build their strength so that they can keep their work going far, far into the future and not burn out like a lot of us do. Um, so the areas that we ask the change makers to consider for their investment are healing and well-being. When we focus on our own healing, our own hearts, our minds, um, we can offer that powerful self to our people. We ask the change makers to invest into mentorship and coaching, to reach out to who are their mentors. Um, have they ever experienced coaching? Maybe that might be something that you might want to consider. We ask them to invest in those things and to also really dig deep into what it means to be an effective mentor themselves to others. We ask the change makers to invest in doing their community building, doing their networking. What relationships might they want to build? What relationships might they want to strengthen that would, create a stronger support network around themselves to be able to continue their powerful work. And we also ask them to invest in some kind of education and skill building. So it can be traditional harvesting and hunting techniques can be their education and skill building. It can be finishing their degree. It can be getting a certificate. So across all of these categories that we invite change makers to invest in, they can be from contemporary systems of coaching and education, and they can also be traditional means of education and skill building and community building. It's their choice. It is their choice. And so I think that that's one of the most important things to share about this fellowship is it is self-designed. The fellows don't produce a product for us. They don't produce a project that they are accountable to for the Indian Fellowship. The change makers are chosen for this fellowship to continue the work they're doing, or to even take a rest, take a break, um, invest in that a retreat time to dream, to really allow that creativity to come forth. And that's what's so exciting about this. They One last thing I'll share before I turn it over to Nicole to share a bit more about what the fellowship is about is um, the way we know that here at NDN Collective, um, we don't know, um, we are not the experts in who are the leaders, who are the change makers in other people's communities. We don't know that. And so, in the beginning, before launching this fellowship, we took over a year to reach into our networks, to which we're pretty extensive, and to make a lot of calls, to have long conversations with our contacts in various communities that we know, that we love, that we trust. Um, to identify community people in those regions. Regions are, like the Pacific Northwest or West Coast Canada or Ontario, um, and identify advisors from those regions, from diverse tribes within those regions, who are really well known by their communities for being generous hearted people, who are known for their willingness to uplift others. And so we reached into our communities. We were advised to call folks and invite them to be our advisors for Changemaker Fellowship. And we worked really deeply with those regional advisors um, to review applications and be the ones to ultimately select who the Changemaker Fellow would be for that year. So that is another really special thing about this fellowship is each of these fellows has been uplifted by Indigenous people from their regions, and Indigenous people from their regions who are known for being generous-hearted people who uplift others. And that is something that grounds me in the strength of this work, and keeps me perpetually learning and inspired both by our change makers and by our advisors. So now I'll turn it over to Nicole to share more.
Thank you, Penelise. Yeah, it's extremely exciting how this fellowship that has never existed for Indigenous people um, has been extremely successful, but also has shown us how needed it was and it is. So NDN taking the lead in creating this um, has pretty much shown the need and um, how it does work, right? Because the Changemaker Fellowship was designed to support movers and shakers that are already doing the work. These are people that have been doing the work already for years, and are already envisioning what they want to see for their communities, what they want to see for their people, what they want to see for the world. And sometimes all that is needed is resources, and for them to have that time to reflect, to create their theory of change, to invest in their own personal well-being. As Penalise was sharing, oftentimes we know that Indigenous leaders are the ones that make the most sacrifice on their personal well-being for their people. And so this fellowship allows them to invest in their healing, to create space, and opportunity for them to heal, to create, to build, to envision, to invest in their leadership. And by investing in change makers and in individuals, we know at NDN that we're investing in their communities in the long term. And so that's something very special about the intent of the fellowship as well. And there's not a lot of requirements from NDN for the fellows. We don't require a specific project to get done. We know they're already going to be doing this work and continuing to do this work. And so pretty much the requirements are, the orientation convening, and then our key program, which is the NDN Indigenous Art of Leadership, which is a week-long training for them to dive into their leadership and grow as leaders. So those are some of the offerings that we make to the fellows as they start their journey in this year. And this fellowship is not, when it ends. Yeah, it is sad. However, it is just the start, right? It's just the springboard for them to keep doing what they were already going to be doing, and hopefully with more strength and with a renewed vision and with more support within their networks, and a stronger support system and a stronger sustainability in their own health and well-being, and with the tools that they have gathered throughout the fellowship year. So it's not the when it ends, it's not the end, but it is the start for what's to come for them. And so that's why I'm very excited for what they'll be sharing, because this fellows from the 2021 cohort that are ending their fellowship year here this year, or in April ended. Some of them are still finishing some of the work that they're doing. You'll be able to see that they're still going to keep doing this amazing work, and that they were able to just have that time and resources to invest in themselves and in their visions and in their people and their communities.
Thank you, Nicole and Penalise, both for sharing some of that history and background and intent of the NDN Changemaker Fellowship. And you know that the two of you have been involved in all of the cohorts so far. And who we'll be talking to today is the second cohort. Is that correct? The second cohort to complete the fellowship?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we have just recently selected the third cohort, which we'll be announcing soon as well. And so being in our third cycle now, I'm sure there's been a lot of observations and takeaways from this really unique and groundbreaking fellowship opportunity that is about self-determined solutions and self-determined and self-directed programming, an opportunity for these Indigenous leaders and change makers to have rest, to have self-care, to build their own capacity as leaders, to to connect to mentors, to think of themselves as a mentor, and to have this space and resource and time to really focus on the work that they're already doing in community. I know we have a number of different cultural practitioners. We have Indigenous language practitioners. We have Indigenous artists and chefs and activists, and a whole host of other Indigenous change makers that are a part of this group, who it's been really amazing to, over the course of the past couple of years, see what they're doing in their home communities. And I know for me personally, I know it's been really exciting and an honor to be a part of, in just some small way, as a part of the organization, to support place-based solutions across 21 distinct regions, all across Turtle Island, all across, colonial borders. And that isn't often seen. A lot of times programming is really limited to a certain country. But as a decolonial organization devoted to decolonization and building Indigenous power, I know that this programming is really unique in that way. And even in how we're, operating in multi-language efforts. So we've had Spanish speaking fellows, and we'll be talking to some of them in the upcoming panels. We've had French speaking fellows that we've had in the past as well. And so reaching across these colonial borders, it's really been exciting to connect to people who are south of the so-called, Mexico border, to connect to people who are from other Indigenous communities, and to connect and to learn from each other, and to be inspired by each other. And so I know that in our upcoming conversations, we're going to get to hear from a lot of them and learn from each other. And that's a theme that I've picked up on so far, is that when you bring together powerful change makers, they galvanize each other, they nourish each other, and they become more powerful individually and collectively, and get to go back to their home communities and do more of that beautiful work. The next thing I wanted to ask you all, the two of you, is, what have been some of the key observations or highlights for you in the past couple of years or few years in working with these change makers throughout their fellowship and even after? So just what are some things that have stood out to you as being especially powerful or significant with the Changemaker Fellowship cohort so far? And we'll start with you, Penelise.
Yeah, Nicole and I have talked sometimes about how one of the first things that the change makers do when they come in is they create their change maker plan. So they work on building a strategy for their year that also touches on those buckets that we've laid out. You know, uh, I know that Nicole and I personally get inspired as we're supporting the fellows in unwinding the things that they need to unwind to be able to invest in themselves and their strength, to be able to step into healing practices in particular. Um, and we've learned and grown alongside with them in that, and it's a perpetual reminder. And one of a big takeaway for me personally, as somebody who's also struggled to um, do that investment in my own self and my own healing, and recognize that that is a way of strengthening my family, um, is watching that. Oh my goodness, being able to watch the fellows enter the program, enter the fellowship year. One of the very few things that we do ask for, the time requirements that we do have, is we have a 5-day Indigenous leadership training, to be able to watch the fellows come in, step into that leadership training, step out of that leadership training, um, um, reborn in a way, and watch them step into profound healing paths for themselves. And then by the end of the fellowship program, being able to hear them reflect, to see the calm in their faces, to hear them reflect how um, they didn't even realize the power of um, being able to slow down, being able to address that hurt, address that trauma, address um, that physical illness, or that physical, that thing that they just been trying to ignore because, addressing their personal wellness was not their focus. They were focused on community always, and to hear them reflect and watch them emerge um, as stronger leaders, hands down, hands down. by that very clear invitation to invest in their personal heart and mind and spirit and strength. I've been taking notes. I've been taking notes over here, personally watching that. Yeah.
Thanks, Penelise. And over to you next, Nicole. What have been some really valuable takeaways for you or big observations from the last couple of cohorts of Changemakers?
Along the lines of what Penelise was saying, it has been very difficult for Indigenous leaders to accept that their individual health will allow them to be there more for their communities. When they're healthy, when they're strong and supported, that they will be able to then in turn be there more for their communities for even a longer period of time. And you know, this fellows and the applicants and everybody that has come across this fellowship comes in with a collective vision, and it has been very hard for them first to accept that, wait, this is for me, like this is not for my project, this is not for my people, but what? And there's this money trauma that exists, right? And then there's this healing that needs to happen. And what I have seen from hearing the fellows reflect at the end of the fellowship is how important it is for them to continue their self-care and their sustainability in the future going forward. Because now, once you're able to experience that and receive the coaching and the mentorship and the art of leadership and challenge your own views and challenge the scarcity mindset that has been embedded in us for many very valid reasons and systemic oppression. When you're able to really start healing that as an individual, I have seen how they are able to be there more for their communities, as I was mentioning, and these are people that are committed to their community work, that have already made a big impact for their people and for the world. And so there's we're in for decolonizing, but there's also continuous decolonization of our minds that needs to continue to happen. And how much the other part that has been super amazing for me, because I have been the point contact for the fellows in what is now known as Mexico, is how much learning can happen and sharing of experiences or learning from each other, not only from the different regions, but from the different, if we're able to cross and dismantle these borders and bring together this amazing network of leaders, which is what we're building, a network of leaders, right? That they'll be able to reach out to each other and continue sharing knowledge with each other. And when they go visit each other and share what it's working in their communities and what they're doing, and inspire each other with what they have done and what they see themselves doing going forward. And so that sharing of knowledge has been really beautiful for me to witness. And they're very different, right? Each region has such a very different history. Each people has a very different history. And so we're all coming from, we know the solutions are different in each place because of that. It's not this collective solution, but at the end of the day, every single fellow is here to build the collective power of Indigenous people, whether that be at a local or regional or national or international scenario. And so that's been really exciting for me to see the bonding. And honestly, what has been very hard, Sarah, is that this fellowship was meant to be a fellowship where the fellows got together at least twice a year. And with COVID, only the first cohort was able to get together in January for their orientation convening. And then COVID hit, they weren't able to meet again. And so this fellowship and all these fellows that you'll be able to hear from, the audience is going to be able to hear from, they were not able to meet in person. We weren't able to bring them together in person yet. And everything was moved to online and virtual. And so it has been a hard experience, but to see how much bonding and fellowship has been created within themselves by themselves, it's just, just leads me to think like what will happen when they're able to meet each other in person.
But beautiful and empowering journey to witness how everyone has had to adapt and adjust and call upon our Indigenous, ingenuity to get through the pandemic in that first cohort, getting together and then everything really changing. And so it's been also really cool and amazing to see that even across, in our various regions, how we're able to connect virtually. And I really appreciated both of you sharing more about the fellowship too. Although we're coworkers and we see each other virtually like this too, just spending time specifically to hear from both of you about the fellowship and the change makers, what has been powerful, I think is just so important and moving and valuable, because there's resources out there. We know that there's an abundance of resources, and if they were used more to invest in Indigenous leaders, to grassroots solutions, and this is a grassroots solution, to invest in these leaders, to invest in people who are just, loving the work of being in community and are absolutely committed to justice and equity for their community, for decolonial work, for defending, their land and their rights, for developing sustainable solutions that are in alignment with our Indigenous values. Like, that is so important. And some of our work at NDN is, where we might be supporting maybe nonprofits with some of our grants, or tribes, or artists, but this fellowship being very unique because we've always from the get, understood the importance of investing in individuals. And that is a grassroots, place-based solution. And this was actually the first grant program of the NDN Foundation work that rolled out. Before all the other grants, before all the other opportunities, this was our first flagship, or not our first flagship, but our first major grant opportunity, investing in individuals. And I think that says a lot. And I can remember back to, the beginning conversations about what this would look like. I could think back to 4 years ago, Penelise, when we were imagining this opportunity, and now being able to see the fruits of that labor and to be able to have these conversations with the fellows and see like the goal was really achieved in so many beautiful ways in supporting these change makers and giving them a rest and helping them to elevate and really grow and blossom into an even more empowered self has been something else to witness. And over the course of these next 5 panels, we're going to get to hear from all of them. And so we're really glad that each of you will be also hosting some conversations with them. And so with that, just want to say thank you to both of you for sharing what you have so far about the NDN Changemaker Fellowship. And I know we'll be hearing more from both of you over the next 5 panels as we talk to a lot of these change makers and hearing from them directly, just some really inspiring reflections, inspiring, philosophies and perspectives and lessons learned, and their ideas around how to continue to create change and movement in our communities in a really meaningful way. So thank you both so much. And thank you everyone again for joining us for this first segment of our NDN Changemaker Showcase. As I mentioned, we're going to be joined by a number of different musical performers, Indigenous musical performers throughout the next several sessions, so stick around. And then also our panels will be, panel 1 will be on decolonization. The next panel will also be on decolonization, where that will be one of the main focuses of conversation. Panels 1 and 2, decolonize. Panel 3 will be on defend. And panel 4 and 5 will also be on Defend and Develop. So we'll be talking to a number of Indigenous changemakers. Our last two panels will have interpretation happening simultaneously, so we'll get to hear from our Spanish-speaking fellows with the support of our amazing interpreters. So please stick around for all of those. And if you're joining us just now, let us know again in the chat where you're joining from. If you're here to support one of your fellow changemakers or one of your relatives, give them a shout out as well. Also, just want to let you know, we're going to be sharing other ways for you all to support these fellows. This particular cohort that we're going to be lifting up, as we mentioned, they're closing out their cohort. And although this fellowship is coming to a close, their work continues in the same way that it existed before we were here. But we want to make sure that you all know how you can support them and support their ongoing work in their communities. So thank you so much again. And thank you to Nick and Gaby for opening us up, to Penelise and Nicole. And we'll close out this first introductory session with a performance by Lyla June. Thanks so much, everyone.
Yaat eshik ara shidane she nanisht ejitrachi inishla she Lyla June yinishye. Hello everyone, my name is Lyla June. I'm from the Nanisht Ejitrachitni clan of the Dene Nation. We're also incorrectly known as Navajo. And I'm so honored to sing for the NDN Changemaker Fellowship recipients and to honor them. I'm so excited for the projects y'all are doing. I know each and every one of you is a profound badass because, you know, that's a really heavy competition when you have hundreds of Native people with their beautiful visions all applying for the same fellowship. And it must be impossible to choose because I'm sure all the dreams are so important and so beautiful. And so those of you who did make it, you know, it's very beautiful. I'm going to sing a little song called 1000 Ancestors to honor you, to remember that, you know, our ancestors are with us all the time, nonstop, wherever we are. And yeah, shout out to all those who didn't make it to the final round too. You're all amazing. When I was young, I had some big dreams, wanted to bring peace and help my family. From a small town, I could feel the gravity, weight on my shoulders, made it hard to spread my wings. But I knew I could do it, knew I could push through it, could do anything if I put my mind to it. Native youth had it hard as children growing up, prayers in our hearts, I knew we could overcome. Got 1,000 ancestors behind me, we marching on, yes, here come the army. Got 1,000 ancestors behind me, we marching on, yes, here comes the army. Here comes the army. Here comes the army. When I turned 13, the world shattered my dreams. All I had left was a bunch of broken pieces. So many years hiding in the dark, almost drowned, but I never gave up. Creator heard my prayers in the depth of my despair. Yeah, it took a couple tries, but I stood back up. Put down the liquor, put down the drugs. I've been sober 9 years, somehow we overcome. Got 1,000 ancestors behind me, we marching on, yes, here come the army. Got 1,000 ancestors behind me, we marching on, yes, here come the army. Here come the army. Here come the army. Ooh. To the creator, fell to my knees, didn't know if she would answer, but she came through clutch at the time when I needed. Now I'm flying high, yes, I'm a believer. Your love is what got me through, it's what got me through to you. Creator, creator to you. Creator, yeah. So thank you all so much for holding space for that little song. Just a little song about getting sober and having my life not be really bad anymore. and about how our ancestors are always with us no matter where we go, and how they run through our veins, and how we are the tip of the spear of all of their dreams. And I'm honored truly to be that with all of you on this planet at this time.